Welcome to all of our Becoming Your Best podcast listeners, wherever you may be in the world today. We're broadcasting this particular podcast from New Orleans. We're at the ATD conference, having a great time. Our guest, Libby, is in Florida, so this is going to be, we have 15,000 people at this conference from all over the world. And so it's perfect for this podcast because this goes all over the world. I'd like to tell you a little bit about our guest, and we'll introduce her. She is often referred to as the Queen of Grants, and she's the founder and CEO of GrantWatch.com. GrantWatch.com. It's the leading grant funding search engine for nonprofits, businesses, and individuals with more than 230,000 monthly visitors. And she has been a trusted guest on TV news segments for outlets including Bloom TV, Lifestyle Today, has been a guest on podcasts, radio shows, including ours. So welcome, Libby Hikind. Good to have you with us. Hikind. It's Libby Hikind. Yeah, we get that name. It's a beautiful name. So before we get started today, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about Libby, and then we'll jump right into our interview and visit. Libby has over 3 decades in education, grant writing, and entrepreneurship, and she is a leading figure in the grant world. Her expertise serves diverse sectors, nonprofits, as we mentioned before, leveraging technology in grant search. So she holds a postmaster's degree in educational administration and supervision. Libby's journey from New York City educator to CEO of a leading online grant search engine really is inspiring. Her book, The Queen of Grants, From Teacher to Grant Writer, which she's holding up right now, to CEO, showcases her dedication to grant writing. So we'll hear all about her, but Libby, to get going today, tell us about your background, including any turning points in your life that's had a significant impact on you.
There's been lots of twists and turns in my life. I started teaching age 15, Sunday school and after school while I was in high school. And I continued my education into elementary ed and a minor in fine arts. I was supposed to go to Pratt. I was accepted. And in those days, like teacher or nurse, my father said to me. I'm very grateful because now I have a pension and I was able to continue on because of his ruling in the house. But I didn't go to Pratt, but I minored in fine arts. I can tell you that as a elementary school student in 6th grade, we had career day. And what I wanted to be was a commercial advertiser way back then. And today I'm doing marketing besides GrantWatch. While we give you the grants for nonprofits, small businesses and individuals, there's a lot of marketing that has to happen. I mean, Steve, you know that as well, right? Any business, you need marketing. And so my desire to be a commercial advertiser is happening today, many, many decades later, as you said. So there's been so many twists and turns. If we go back to my teaching, my special education class needed to pass New York City exams and New York State exams. And it was very difficult to teach them because of the behavioral issues. I wanted to take them into a computer room. We had one computer room in the school, Tandy Model 4s, which were those big clunkers in those days. Teach them word processing. It didn't exist. The computers didn't have enough memory. And eventually, through going to the district office and them teaching me, I wrote my first grant, a grant to Tandy Radio Shack, and we won, 1 of 4 in the United States. Unreal. That was the beginning of my career as a grant writer. And it's just gone on and on. Now I don't write grants anymore. I've retired from that because I'm running GrantWatch and Grant Writer team. I'm the host of Grant Talk, and I've just recently published a book in February 1st, 2024. So many twists and turns.
Okay, yes. Well, I've got so many questions for you today.
I'm ready.
And yeah, first of all, tell us about your
Well, here
book.
we go again. I'm holding it up for everybody. It's got a little glare on it, so I'm twisting it so that you can see it. The Queen of Grants, from teacher to grant writer to CEO. So the beginning of the book takes you on my journey, and it's how I began, everything until today, and it stops before I started Grant Talk, which will be the second book, and I've already started writing. In the book, it answers every question you've ever wanted to know about grants. That's how I took everything from the past 14 years and put it in the book. Then I divided the book up based on each different section of a grant, and I've modeled everything for you so that you can see what goes into each section. I've also told you my tips and tricks, which is PMF, passion maps and folders, and mark that all out for you, how to map a grant. It's very important that everything from the beginning to the end, every piece of writing that goes in, everything aligns. Your goals, your needs, your goals, your objectives, your activities, your evaluation, your budget, everything has to be in line with each other. So I go through all of that. And then at the end, I talk about AI a little bit, which will also be more in the next book. So it's all there.
Well, fun book. Sounds like it's chock full of really good information if you're thinking
And
about
I
a
write the
grant.
way I speak. So it's very easy reading.
Okay, and for our listeners, we're always so honored to have you with us today. And the reason we have Libby with us is she's one of the best anywhere in grant writing and knows this world. And some of you may have a project or some initiative that you think can bless people. Well, that's the purpose of this podcast today, is to give you some ideas. This is a great resource for us, and so we'll enjoy this. So, first of all, what are some of your best lessons learned as a leader?
No, as a leader, it's empathy. Really, it's empathy and not falling into somebody else's burden. So you have to have that separation, but you have to feel for the people, because if you fall in, you just can't continue to lead. You're just so immersed in somebody else's issue. So I have to have empathy. I have to be able to point my people in the right direction of how to get help, but not be part of their issue. And that's very hard.
Yeah, because once you understand somebody, then perhaps you can better provide, work together, collaborate with them to find ways forward, good ways forward.
You know,
That's
I looked
leadership.
at your book, so thank you for sending it to me. And I find at the beginning of the book, you're really giving a values education to everyone, what it means to be a great leader. And you have to be a model, because you can't say, do what I say, not what I do. And that's important. And we have a lot of things across different political spectrums, religious spectrums, everything else. But the core value system that's in somebody, that's in their soul, is so important. And that comes out in your leadership. And I thank you for including that in the initial part of the book. And I think you probably build all your principles on that.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, that's a great insight. Well, those are two great tips for every single one of us, which is to remember to have empathy. And I expect that applies in grant writing too, trying to reach out and sense, what are the needs and what are the interest of those providing the grant. So really getting in their shoes, and then we're in a better place. But I also love what you just pointed out, Libby, which is being really aware of uh, timeless values and principles that we can all operate on, that lead helps us find confidence, and they work. They produce a good outcome. So okay, well, thanks. That was kind of a spontaneous question, and how have people responded to your
Well,
book?
as of today, now understand the book is out since February 1st, and today is May 21st. We've sold 370 copies. And talking to other first time writers, authors, I think it's a great number. I'm not sure. What do you think, Steve?
I think it's a great start, especially for grant writing. I mean, you have a little bit more of a narrow
Right.
market there. So that kind of reception is lovely. I know I'm going
Thank you.
to add to it because we are interested. And I was just talking with Libby about this before we started, that we have some thoughts of what we can do in helping people that are disadvantaged with leadership principles to help them create their own personal vision. And, they may not have had a traditional family setting where they could have a positive influence. And maybe they ended up in gangs or something else. They just got off track somehow. And so there are some ways that maybe we could help. How would you
Well,
approach that, Libby? How do you use your services, your experience to kind of look for opportunities to bless certain,
well, over the
individuals,
years, I've taught
groups?
at-risk children and at-risk youth, and I understand that the main problem is that they only see what's in front of them. They don't see the short-term and the long-term goals. There's no planning. It's I take it because I want it, not there are consequences to your actions, not if I don't take it and I think that I want it, I'm going to go earn the money for it and then I'll be able to purchase it and I'll save some of my money for another day. So, what you're trying to do is really very helpful. If we can get youth to think in terms of goals, which I know that's also in your book, that would be really helpful. So we have grants. We have 60 categories of grants on GrantWatch. And one of them is workforce training, and another is mental health. So and then we also have youth and at-risk youth. So there are grants out there for what you're trying to do. Now, it could be that you might have to join with another nonprofit organization because there may be a focus of what the grant is for. Like hypothetically, a grant could be out there to um, teach youth to be bus drivers. Let's just say that's a grant, right? They need bus drivers. They need more transportation opportunities. Okay, now that's not your thing, but your thing is workforce, goals, value system. And now we if the grant is to teach something, some career goal or skill, they need you for retention because people join programs and they leave. So you need to focus on retention. Even if you're going to join with the university, retention is very important. They don't want their freshmen not to make it to seniors, right? So they need you. And that's
Right.
how you should look at it. Look at every grant. Can we do all of it? Are we eligible? Do we need a partner? And form that partnership. And I think you'll have that because you outreach to so many nonprofit organizations with what you do. So just think that way.
Okay, that's really great advice. And tell, if you don't mind, inform me and our listeners about Grant Watch. How does it work, and is it a monthly subscription, or how does that work exactly? And how would one find information about it
So
and
GrantWatch
access it?
is a subscription based website, and we have four price points: $18 a week, 45 a month, $90 a quarter, or $199, which is the absolute best value for an entire year. And when you subscribe, you have access to everything. So the first thing you'll start with is your location, because every grant has a geographic focus. Now, it could be it's the United States, it's international, it's Canada, it's Israel, it's all over. It could be that. But it could also be local to your small community. So you need to define your location in your search. So the first thing is pick your state, your country, and then start looking through the categories. We have multiple ways to search. You can also search for a keyword phrase, and then you'll go through that and look at your eligibility and see if it's for you. Another thing we have, and I don't want to go on and on about it because I've worked so hard, so I keep talking about it. We have 990 reports. You could look at other foundations that have given grants for what you want to do, and then you can approach them with a letter of inquiry. So you have multiple ways. We show currently available grants, and we've just added upcoming grants. So if we know a grant is coming out, but the guidelines are not finished, we will put that there for you as well so you can do some planning.
Okay. Well, I love that answer. That's very helpful. Tell us about your Grant Talk show. It's a podcast show, I believe you mentioned it earlier.
So,
Tell us about
Grant
that.
Talk is where I interview funding sources that give grants and grant recipients that have received grants that they found on GrantWatch. I'm also going to start interviewing some B2B organizations to help the grant seeking community. It's very interesting. When you talk to a grant recipient, you find out what they've been doing to receive grants and their skills, their tips and tricks, how they continue to communicate with the funding source so that they're funded year after year. It's just great. It's like people that are just like you and I, and you say, "Oh, if she could apply, if he could apply for their organization and look how much they received, I can do it too." So the book, while my book says that also, my book tells you, I did it, you can do it too. I wrote my first grant, why not you? You can hear that from other people. And when we talk to funding sources, we find out what's behind that curtain. You submit the grant, and then what happens next? And everybody wants to know, is one person making the decision or 20 people? Are they going in the garbage? Did they already pick who they want to fund and we just did this for nothing? It's really interesting to hear from them. So it's even if we're speaking to an organization is in Wisconsin and you're in Florida and you say, well, they don't fund where I live, that's not what's important. What's important is what goes on after a grant is submitted and how can you make your application better.
Okay, so two questions
Okay.
that come up to me. One is, let's say that you submit a grant and it's not accepted. Um, are you able to ask for what would be your recommendation on in terms of making contact with them and just getting feedback? How could I
Most funding
improve?
sources say that they respond to that contact. So you can communicate with the funding source.
Okay.
When it comes to the federal government and state governments, you definitely are allowed under freedom of information to ask for your score on the grant. When it comes to private foundations and nonprofits, they do want to hear from you. Sometimes it's something very simple and you can apply again next year. And sometimes you did a great job, but they only had money to fund 10 and yours was number 11 on their list. So, yes, apply again.
Yeah. Okay. That's good advice. And how can we learn from our mistakes? Have you ever made a mistake
Oh,
in
yes, big
submitting a
time.
grant?
My first mistake was I didn't, well, it goes way back to Commodore 64, which many of your listeners won't know what we're speaking about. Um, but you remember, right?
I do.
Uh, it was
Yeah.
my first grant and I didn't spell check. That's one mistake I made. I write about it in the book. Another mistake was I didn't know to save my work. I crossed my legs under my desk, kicked out the plug. 23 pages had to be rewritten. Those were big mistakes, but I won. That's what's important. I persevered. Um, Another mistake was I left on vacation. I left the grant application with somebody to submit with exact directions. They didn't follow it. They were also leaving on vacation. And so they were in a hurry. And what happened was it was a federal grant. And I exceeded the 60 pages because the font was the wrong font. The margins were wrong. And my budget was left out because the federal government just cuts it. When you exceed the page limit, you're done. Whatever else was there is not there. So, of course, there was no budget. I couldn't win because I lost all those points. So I learned.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that.
It's in my book.
And we can learn. That's what your book's about. We can
That's why I
learn from
wrote
your
them. Not,
mistakes.
I'm a little embarrassed sometimes, but I really want people to learn from my mistakes.
Yeah. So, what makes GrantWatch? You may have already talked about this. The number one grants website.
Well, when you call GrantWatch, you get a human being that is knowledgeable in what we
Oh.
do. You're not getting someone in another country. These are Americans that have read my book, have worked on the book with me, have been with me for quite a while. They will point you in the right direction. I mean, of course, if you call after hours, we will respond via email. We have a live chat, and that's not a bot. So please don't walk away. If somebody's not answering and it's between 9 and 6 Eastern time, stick with it. It just means we're a little busy. And because a lot of people call in, so we have phone, chat, and email. And we work really hard to help people. So that's a main thing. Currently available grants also. If you're looking on the web, you're going to get stuck in a rabbit hole. Even some of our competitors, the grants have expired. And we don't leave them there. We hit a button every day to archive the grants if they came due, and then we'll bring them back when they're available. And we even say thank you to the good citizens who are on our website. And occasionally they find something that we missed, and we actually reward them for letting us know.
Wonderful. Oh, that's a good answer. What would be the most important advice that you have for someone preparing a grant?
Follow directions. Most important. Follow it, like cross every T, dot every I, anything, you get your ducks in a row, and read those questions carefully over and over again so that you're really extracting what are they looking for. Just don't go off on a tangent. Stay focused, answer the question, stay within sometimes there's a character count, sometimes there's a page limit, whatever it is, and check your eligibility. When you write a grant, you're going to see it takes, and well, you wrote one, so you know it takes over the entire organization. During that time, everybody has to submit something to the grant application. You need to go to your CPA and get information. You have to go to your program director. Sometimes you have to go to, if it's parents or it's subscribers or it's participants, you have to get surveys from them. You have a lot of work to do sometimes, but I don't want to chase people away from writing grants. Sometimes a grant is as simple as a one-page fill-in on the web. It could be that easy. And sometimes a grant is 100 pages and then another 100 pages of appendices. So, you have to look at it and say, are we really and truly eligible? And if you're not, and you can't partner with someone to make yourself eligible, pass on it. Even though it's a lot of money, it's not worth the time and effort.
Well, that is fantastic advice. I'll bet my listeners would love to just sit in a room with you, Libby, and pick your brain. I've tried to ask some questions that might give us a feel for things. Any final tips that you would have for our listeners? And then I'd like to have you I'll ask this question separately afterwards, but I want to be sure it's clear how people can get information on what you're doing. But how about any final tips,
Stay focused,
first of all?
stay organized, watch the deadlines. If there's not enough time in your life to complete an application, don't start that one. Go to the next one, because grants take a while and there's a lot of thought that goes into it. So stay focused and organized. Keep a calendar. We actually have a grants calendar on GrantWatch so that you can pace yourself. You might want to say, in 2 weeks, I want to have my first draft completed. You could put that in your calendar. In 3 weeks, I want to have everybody on the board review it. Set yourself these short-term goals, because the long-term goal is to submit, and to submit early. Sometimes money runs out. That can happen as well. It happened during COVID.
Yeah.
During COVID, the grants were there and the money ran out very quickly, and then new grants came out. But if you didn't apply right away, you just didn't get it.
Yeah, lost. Well, tell our listeners how they can learn about what you're doing, Libby. This has been so fun today.
Well,
I've loved it.
The first thing is grantwatch.com. Just go there, log in, create a user and password, and you'll get emails from us. And when you're ready, you'll subscribe and pay a subscription fee. You don't have to right away. You'll just get our emails, and there are a lot of them because we send grants out. We have grant news on GrantWatch, so you'll have wonderful articles that will point you in the right direction. If you go on to YouTube, you can find GrantWatch and you can subscribe. And every week we try to drop at least one video where we've spoken to either a funding source or a funder, or or a grant recipient, and you'll be able to watch that as well. There's a lot of tutorial videos there that'll help you. And on GrantWatch, there is one of the drop downs says testimonials. I think it's in the about, probably. You can listen to other people talk about how GrantWatch has helped them. So you'll know we're legit, we're real, and we're out there, and we're helping everyone.
Well, it's been a delight to have you
one
with
other
us
thing,
today, Libby.
Steve,
Thank you for coming
the book,
on.
Amazon.com. That's where you'll find it.
Okay, the Queen of Grants. There we have it. Well, we wish you the best in what you're doing. You're actually blessing a lot of people by giving them, sharing your experience and sharing some of the keys of the most important things you've learned that'll help them avoid mistakes and help them try to do good in the world and leave the world a better place, because there's people willing to help. There's funds set aside for good purposes. So congratulations. Keep up the good work, Libby.
And you too, Steve. I think that giving core values to people that missed out on them is a great thing.
Well, thank you. And to our listeners, thanks for joining in today. And I hope that you picked up some ideas that can be helpful. I know I have, and look forward to learning more and going on to your site. I want to subscribe. I mean, I think we can use it. I think the perspective it will give will be helpful for us, and I'll look forward to your book. I forgot to ask you this before we got going. I know you have the book. We'll get that. Do you happen to have that on audio, or is it just in the printed format right now?
I think it's just print. I don't think we did audio yet, but that's a good idea. I didn't go there because I'm not an audio learner, but I guess there are many people that are. So I think it should be our next step. So thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, more and more there are. I know that we've found, it's not everybody, but there's certainly a market there. Well, we wish you the best, Libby.
Thank you, everybody.
And thanks again.
Be well.